Alright. Hallo, liebe Freunde da draußen. Wir, die Avis for Future, begrüßen euch recht herzlich zur mittlerweile 56. Episode von Wissenschaft fürs Wohnzimmer. Heute zu Gast aus dem wunderschönen Cordoba in Argentinien, Tamara Maggioni. Ich bin Björn, and today's episode will be in English, so feel free to ask us any question, preferably in English, German, or Spanish, in the live chat below or somewhere here on YouTube. As I said, my name is Björn. I also work for the Alfred-Wegener-Institut in the bioeconomy section on anything related to aquaculture and basically making the food from tomorrow more sustainable. If you want to look at that, I think it was episode 3 where you can see me. I'm not alone. I'm also here with Melissa and Kami, so let's hear it from you.
Hola, guten Abend, and hello from me. My name is Melissa, and I'm a PhD student at the Deep Sea Group at AVI. And I work with tiny animals which live on the Arctic deep sea floor. And if you want to know why we deep sea researchers use spoons, and if you are German speaking, then check out episode number 4. I'll explain you this.
Hello, everybody. I'm super happy to be here in this international episode. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Camila Neder. I am from Cordoba too, and I have been also talking about my topic here, going into Antarctica and how species distribution model works, but unfortunately I didn't do my homework and I don't know exactly which is my episode. But anyway, I invite you to look for the red stocks in our channel. So thank you very much for joining us, and I will directly move to Tammy so that she can introduce herself. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, everybody. Hi, everybody. My name is Tamara Maggioni, and well, I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the Instituto de Diversidad Animal here in Argentina. And I'm also a scientific journalist. I enjoy a lot of communication, science communication. And in the past year, we have been preparing this magazine from our institute, and I'm in charge of it. So it's very inspiring for me. And well, here today, thank you, Cami. Cami invited me to talk about how climate change and the post-truth phenomenon and all these fake news interrelate, and what can we as individuals do to contrast this. So I'm very happy to talk to you today. So I'm going to share my screen now. So, are you seeing the screen? Of course. Well, let's talk about climate change under the post-truth era and how important it is to do good science communication, and also the role of introspection to avoid fake news. So, to start this conversation, I began questioning myself with this: is the next pandemic really climate change? Well, I was reading this blog by Bill Gates that he wrote that by 2060, climate change could be just as deadly as COVID-19. And by that, the 22nd century, it could be just five times just as deadly. And I wonder if under that scenario could be true. And despite Gates' solutionist approach, which he wrote in his book, in which technology will come and save us, we can all agree that climate change is, in fact, one of the biggest challenges our civilization has ever faced. And in fact, it's very probable to be the next pandemic in the last years. But despite this, there's a lot of people today in the world who still deny climate change. They don't believe in climate change at all, or they don't believe that humans have to do with climate change. A percentage that it's still around 20% in the United States. So at this point, maybe you have been thinking about this character who might be questioned as the person responsible for all of this, but we cannot blame just one person. We cannot give him so much credit for it. So what is going on? What is going on behind this all? Not being sure about who's responsible for climate change. So the answer I found to all of this is post-truth. Post-truth as a phenomenon has always been existing in the world, but it became very important after the year 2019 when it was named. When we talk about post-truth, we are talking about some phenomenon that relates to circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion or personal beliefs. And in shorter terms, we could just say that are affirmations that feel true, but are not. And that definition seems fine, but it seems to leave out one of the most important actors or actresses in the post-truth phenomenon, and that's ourselves. Believe it or not, we do have responsibilities in the generation of fake news and in the divulgation of fake news. Of course, there are these other groups of power that have explicit intentions of presenting fake news, but we also are responsible for them. So how is it that we are responsible for making up fake news? Not making up, but spreading out fake news. Well, first of all, there's a lot of people, including us, if we are not experts on the subject, which lack the experience on how science works. We don't know what scientific consensus is. We don't know what it takes to build consensus, and that's key to understand a lot of things in climate change. Personal beliefs, ideas, values, traditions, or religions, all those also get in the way of unintentional generation of fake news. It's been demonstrated in science communication that when talking to someone as if that other person doesn't know about what we are talking about, and we try to that person with facts and all this data, we will probably fail. And that's because we are people, we're person, that we have ideas, that we have thoughts, values, and traditions, and that has to be taken into consideration. Our brains also trick us a lot. We have 3 common, what is called cognitive biases. The first one, which is my favorite, is called the cherry picking. And it means that we only are going to take that information that fits our previous thoughts. And the other information, we just take it under the carpet, we just reject it. The second cognitive bias means that it's called the survivorship bias. And it means that we only take one example as a general rule, and we lack the perspective and what's happening around. It can be summarized as, well, if it works for me, it works for everybody. And that's not always the case. And the third cognitive bias is, well, confusing chance with causality, or in scientific terms, we know this as correlation does not imply causation. On top of that, of all these biases, we have intuition. We tend to believe more in our guts, in what our instincts is telling us, than what evidence has to tell. Tribalism, well, here, tribalism has a key role in unintentional post-truth and spreading of fake news, because we are social beings, and we tend to form groups with those who think just like us, and we tend to reject and not hear all those people that don't think just like us. And that's impossible to avoid. We have just to know that it is like that, and we have to know to deal with that tribalism. And there's this impossibility to distinguish between false experts and real experts. And this is because in some years, scientists have been addressing to the general public, just like in some condescending way, I'm presenting information that may not fit the person's thoughts. And there's other amounts of experts who are just by the experts, or maybe they have been paid by some other groups with intentions. And well, that's it for us. Let's go to talk about the intentional others. Well, there is this group of power. There's this group. So when here, I also included mass media. This group of power are generally the big industries that are. There are this big, huge amount of people and entrepreneurs and industries that have economic and political interests, and they constantly try to feed or implant fake news in our heads. Mass media, I also include this group here because, well, at least in Argentina, they have been bought to do propaganda. So mass media acts just like another group of power because it's an instrument of this group of power. And well, how do these groups of powers operate? Well, one way is we just saw it just by buying certain mass media, but in terms of strategies, we can say that these different groups of power act just by implanting doubts, by information overload, which is giving us a lot of information all the time, and just they kill us our critical capacity to think reasonably, or they just misinform, which is giving certainties where there's not enough certainty. And mass media, well, mass media, how they act, whether they work or not for these groups of power, if they inform in a certain way, they can cooperate in this post-truth phenomenon. When they amplify extreme voices, even if it's the position of one scientist versus the enormous consensus, they are contributing to the spreading of fake news. And for instance, when they give credibility to doubters or opinions of people who are not based on evidence, they are also contributing to the generation of fake news. And social media, well, social media is like the strawberry of this fake news pie. Because of mass media, because of social media, we are talking here today. And why is it that social media works so well? One of the reasons social media works so well, it's because we tend to act as peacocks in the web. And that means that we tend not to use them to communicate, but tend to use them to show the others our affinities. We tend to show the others where we stand and not communicate. And when we do that, when we want to show the others our affinities, we tend to do that with a lot of emotions, outrageously, and that kind of communication seems to be addictive. And for the other hand, there is this social media, especially Twitter. And what has been found is that fake truths or lies spread not only faster, in fact, 6 times faster, they reach also more people than real news or the truth. In fact, there is a 70% chance of fake news being retweeted than real news and becoming viral. So just to go into climate change specifically, let's discuss how climate change but the post-truth around climate change has been constructed. Well, let's first clarify that, post-truth, climate change, it's one of the most complex topics. It's even more complex than when we compare it with other topics like plain Earth or the landing on the moon. What we find in climate change is that we have all of these things interrelated. We have ourselves being responsible of spreading fake news. We have the others with intentions. We have even drones. We have mass media. We have social media, all playing in concert in this giant soup of post-truth. Well, let's analyze first of all the ourself parts of the equation. In terms of scientific evidence, well, here we have 2 limitations. First of all, there's not much awareness in the public of what scientific consensus means. And in climate change specifically, it has been measured. There's not a lot of topic in which the scientific consensus has been measured, but in climate change, it has. And it has reached 97%. And moreover, the other 3%, it's not even a consensus. The 3% that remains, it's all different postures. So we have a 97% community of scientists around the world who think that climate change is man-made, is responsibility of humans. And for the other hand, the evidence is also really hard to comprehend and interpret by a non-expert type. In fact, most people think that 1 or 2 degrees Celsius more is not that bad. For the other hand, we have that climate change is very anti-intuitive. Effects, of course, are not notorious on a daily basis. And if we think just like Donald Trump, who thinks that, well, if it's freeze today, it must not be wrong. It's just science is wrong. But effects are not notorious and they are gradual. So they are really hard to see. And also the scale of occurrence. The causes, consequences, or solutions are so far away from us that it leaves us to the side, and we tend to think that, well, maybe we have nothing to do with solving this problem. Tribalism is also very strong when dealing with climate change solutions or climate change information. Here in this chart, which I took from the Pew Research Center, which I invite you to visit, it's a very good website. We have the Republican versus the Democrat. This is the percentage of people who think that climate change is caused by humans. And in the bars, they are ordered from low to high knowledge on science. And we see that the main difference is not on how much or how much or how less they know about science, but the main difference is linked to what political party they belong to. And this is also seen in Germany, in which almost more than half of the people that feel more close to the Alternative for Deutschland political party think that there has to be no need to act when it comes to climate change issues. On the other hand, the Greens tend to be more likely to be prone to do something about climate change. And here I come to this example because I think it demonstrates our incapacity to distinguish between real experts from false experts. Well, if you don't know her, this is Naomi Seibt. She's German, by the way, but she could be from any country. And she has been called the anti-Greta. Well, she's 20 years old and she claims that climate change exists, but it's a natural phenomenon and that humans have nothing to do with it. And how she came to the conclusion? Well, because she supposedly did her research. And here again, it's completely okay to have doubts and to express them. But what is wrong and dangerous is to give that 97% scientific consensus and piles of evidence the same weight as the opinion of one person who does not have any background on science or expertise in science. And well, here comes the enormous companies with economical or political interests behind. And well, the thing is that climate change as a fact and the public perception of it keeps differing, most probably due to the continuous attempts and lobby of a very powerful international group known as the Big Oil, which feeds constantly on our tribalism, our cognitive biases, and our emotions. But this is not new. There is evidence of these big industries, such as the big tobacco, which is the first one in the 50s, the big pharma or the big sugar, that have been operating in the same way. And well, you can read all about this in this book by Gäste and Conway, which is really interesting. Oops. And well, here I present you, this is Bigoe. And they have been using all tools and strategies available. They have been hunting doubts, they have been using social media, they have been using trolls, they have been using public figures, they have been, they have been acting like these invisible puppeteers, like moving the strings of their selected puppets from the very dark shadows. And of course, there's a lot of examples on how they operate, but I think we can all agree that this character, Donald Trump, has been a key player in all of this. And his speech, despite being all emotional and almost empty of content, has been really effective. And well, why is that? Well, because he managed to gain, first of all, he managed to gain the trust of people by showing himself as someone who's anti-politician. And when he became the president, he was constantly appealing to emotions of the voters that voted for him by telling them just what they wanted to hear. And he also masterfully managed to generate the sensation that what he was saying was true, even though if it weren't true at all. In addition, all that mass media who were against him just criticized him, and many times offensively, and that only made things worse. And here is an interesting example I bring back to you, Naomi. And this is how media should not work if it were really interested in reporting the truth. And you can see how Fox decided to give her a huge amount of space and time. But by the title, Taking World by Storm, you can all guess that they did it on purpose. And in regard to her, I have to say that you should be aware that she was hired by the Heartland Institution as soon as she was popular in the YouTube. And the Heartland Institution is a think tank that is being suspected to support climate change skeptics. So here's again how these powerful groups operate. So after Mr. Trump and several projects that aim to communicate effectively on climate change in particular, such as this one, the Yale program on climate change communication, we can see that today, at least for North Americans, according to the graphs, they are more alarmed than they were dismissive or doubtful a few years ago. There's still a debate going on around the role of social media in the banning of fake news. I will not go into that in this talk, but here are some questions that we should reflect on. Is it giving social media the power to ban any content? Is giving them too much power? Are we talking or not about censorship? Should we or should not the governments be involved in this process? And well, just to finish and close up this conversation, I think we should try to respond if there's anything we can do to fight against post-truth when it comes to communicating on climate change. Well, the bad news is that science communication is still in its infancy, but there are some things that have been proven to work. First of all, to avoid the unintentional spreading of fake news, we should always do our research, do introspection, and check our sources. We should try not to be carried away by our emotions, tribalisms, cognitive biases. Second, we should always talk. We should converse with people. We should use constantly mass media. We should communicate the truth to others and be constant, because there's evidence that when hearing about something that is true over and over again, there is what is called a tipping point for the logical reasoning. And that person finally ends up changing his or her mind. What also seems to work, specifically in climate change, is emphasizing the role of the scientific consensus around it. Even if we're not aware of climate change at all, it should work, emphasizing that 97% of all scientists in the world believe in climate change is a fact. The deficit model. Also, when addressing to someone, explaining things to others, assuming that they don't know enough, and just explaining or giving the facts don't work. Remember that storytelling works best. And also, when do be empathic, violent speeches only makes the others conserve even more their previous postures. And finally, be aware of the use of humor. When you use memes, remember that only 5% understand them, and they have been recently found to be the instruments of the spreading of fake news through Instagram. And well, all of this information you can read if you can read Spanish from this book from Guadalupe Nogués, which is called Pensar con otros, Thinking with Others, and it has all of the information that I just said. And well, that's it. That's it for me today. I'm sorry for I was really nervous, but I hope you have enjoyed it, and it was a pleasure. And thank you, Jami, again for the invitation. And I can't stop sharing.
Muchas gracias, Tamara. Muy bien. Yeah, thank you, Tamara. I really enjoyed the talk. Before we go into more, I just wanted to let you know that next week we will also have a talk, not an international one, and a German one from Maya Hoffmann, and she'll be talking about the following: von Arbeitsplätzen, Faulheit und Generalstreik, die Arbeitskritik die Klimadebatte bereichern kann. But now let's get back to the topic of today and to Tamara's talk. Melissa, do we have any questions in the chat already?
As far as I can see, there are no questions in the chat already, but dear people out there, if you have any questions to ask for Tamara, feel free to do so. But anyhow, yeah, thanks again for this great and interesting talk. I do have a question, and yeah, I was wondering, how can we use mass media like TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter to provide solid information on climate change? Because I find it rather difficult, you know, because these algorithms behind all these different softwares, as soon as you clicked on the wrong button, you will get dragged into a hurricane of fake news and stuff. How can we basically spread our news, which are not fake news, hopefully?
Well, that's a problem, and the thing is, the news that are cause a stronger emotional reaction. The news that are more novel are those that will generate the most impact in the other people, and they will be clicked by the other person. I have come with a lot of people who do the contrary. They just use an interesting, a very llamativo, a very title that it's almost the opposite to what they want to say. And when you click, it says, well, if you thought about this, if you came to this because of that, well, let me clear this up. This is la 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 la. That is not true, blah, 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 blah. That's one way. The other way is, I don't know how, that's the thing. I don't know if anybody knows how to spread faster the real news. But I think we should all do what we should all do is just to spread news in every kind of content with humor. We have to talk to others a lot, and of course we have to advise the others to use now there is this pages that check information, And we have to advise everybody, especially the oldest people who don't know how really this social media work, to be really careful, to check for the sources. But it's really un desafío,
yeah, definitely a challenge.
It what?
A challenge. It's definitely a challenge.
Definitely a challenge to make a real news very interesting and very appealing, so the other one can click on it. We have to, I don't know, gain the other side. Fake news are more interesting, and that's because how our brain works.
Yeah, thank you. I found this very interesting with this kind of reverse psychology, that you have a statement and you click on it, and then it's actually the other way around. That
the opposite.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting, and probably we need to think about more creative solutions, how to spread these in a very interesting and catchy way. I think that's the most, because usually on this app you have seconds, like not even seconds, you have so little time to make people be interested in these news. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. No, and not only interesting, but you have to keep in mind not to be like condescending to the other, like you are wrong and I am right. Well, just talk to the other like we are also humans. We are not above the top scientists that know it all, and we have this data that you understand and you're right. I think we have to come down to the storytelling, and in fact, what we are trying to do in our magazine is what is called the inserting the data into a story. And that works really well with children, but with adults, it should work as well. We start telling a story, as myths were in the past going on and on and on from generation to generation. And in the telling of the story, we insert information just like hidden in there. That's another way.
Thank you very much, Tamara, for your fantastic gesture to let us understand what's really importancy of this communication, and how can that really deals with the information, as you say, also like this hidden information, that it is really the point to sharing. So yeah, thank you very much once again for your talk. I really enjoy it. I will go into one of the questions that was there appearing in the chat, more or less also into the direction of social media and how this are creating this affinity, and then because of this affinity and showing this affinity, not really communicating, but highlighting the affinity of a topic, and then you're just sharing that. It was highlighting one of these numbers that you gave. So this 5% of the memes are understandable. Less than 5% understand memes, states, zebra twists. Really low percent. Is that scientific proven? So I think that into this scientific or not, then this came up.
Yes, I think that I didn't find the paper, but it was a paper, and I think it was a 3%. In fact, I have to look for it, but it was a one-digit number percentage. People don't understand memes. They are very hard to comprehend, and there's also this paper that talks about memes and Instagram, and how memes have become the tool for younger people to spread fake news. Not for younger people, but they have become the instrument of someone behind to spread fake news to young people. So we have to be really careful with memes. I use them a lot. I really love them, but we have to be really careful.
So I just took a look at the chat. It's still quiet. Hopefully not all people are, afraid of asking us in English. You can also ask us in German or Spanish. We'll manage. Don't worry. So for you personally, how was your transition from science more to science communication? How did this happen? And what's your story behind? How did you get there?
Well, actually, I started the other way around. I began to study journalism, and because I really enjoyed writing, and then I realized that to be a journalism, it required a lot of work and it required a lot of talking to people. I'm not a good talker to other people. I'm more of a writer. So I changed my mind, but I finished. I did 3 years and I became a journalist. But then I found out that my way was doing research, because I have a cousin who's a biologist, and I started biology. But then I also missed doing journalism, but I missed the writing part of journalism. So I became a scientific journalism, but that doesn't do research. I just share what other scientists do in an understandable way, or in a way that it's more shareable to the general public. So I found my spot in there, writing, science, and not exactly doing journalist investigations, which requires a lot of talking to different people and moving around. And that's how I ended up in here.
And have you personally also felt, pushback from public opinion, people posting on, I don't know, your writing, or feedback that you got, like also on social media? Because it very fast happens now with the pandemic. You see it, scientists are really, dragged out in front of the camera. Luckily, also in Germany, you have some great scientists that do science communication on other channels. Did you notice it for yourself? Did you feel, pushback, people, dragging you into fake news, questioning your credibility, stuff like that, or you're not there yet?
Well, I'm not there yet. For many people, I just do it on my own with the people around me. It's very hard. I tried to convince. I had one friend of my mother who's really into not vaccination. She does not believe in vaccination at all, and she constantly kept showing me all these YouTube videos and all these captures from WhatsApp and all this media, which for me were really easy to say, look, this is wrong. Look at this. This is the solid evidence. And we have to start doing that, I think, from individual to individual, talking and sharing, and not violently, because the other people is convinced that she or he is right. But it's a really hard process. It's going on and on and on and on and on, and eventually the coin is like, you make a click, the other person makes a click, because if you keep giving that person the correct amount of information from different sources, in the end, I think they change their minds, at least a little bit. But I just did it with 2 or 3 persons in nearby, and I'm constantly doing that with a friend who I know does not believe in vaccines, and I'm not telling him directly, you're wrong, vaccines are good, what are you doing? But every time I see him, it's like, this fact, this fact, this fact, and maybe sometime he will reconsider his position.
So you're trying to injecting some facts on vaccines.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think there's some activity on the chat, Melissa.
Yes, there's actually a question in the chat. Supermommel is asking if you could give us some examples for good scientific communication, or do you have idols that we should all know about?
If we should have a model?
If you have some persons we should know about, which do great scientific communication, except of us.
Yes, I do have examples, but they are from Argentina. In Argentina, what happens is really strange because there are one or two specialized journalists in science, and in general, there is not. And with all of this COVID, I thought, well, they will be hiring more scientists, more journalists specialized in science, but they didn't. Well, and that's because they don't have the intentions of showing true science. But well, an example of a good scientist communicator in English, I'll have to think a little bit more about a good one. Here in Argentina, I always follow this person called Nora Barr. But in English, I don't really know outside Argentina. I'm sorry. I have to look for them.
Oh, don't worry. But you can then let us know the person, and we can put it in the chat later on, or probably in the comments below the video.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe once more that Konstantin was asking at the beginning of your talk. So he was also very thankful for the talk, and he was wondering, what do you think a little bit more about Bill's book? So the ones that you were mentioning in your talk, he would like to have a little bit more of information about which is your opinion with that, of how to avoid the climate disaster.
It was cut
in the book. In the book regarding that you mentioned from Bill Gates, from how to avoid the climate disaster, there is one person in the chat that he would like to know a little bit more about your opinion regarding that topic.
Oh, regarding Bill Gates' solutionist approach. Well, the fact is that Bill Gates talks about he doesn't want to change the general system. He's keeping the system the way it is, but with more technology to save us. And I think he's right and he's wrong at the same time. I think we have to think, we have to change some things that we do today, the way we do them. And we also have to take advantage of technology. We cannot keep living as we do today. We have to start living more in concert with nature. We have to stop using that much fuel. We have to give space to wildlife. We have to be more tolerant to the other forms of life. And we also have to use technology. Technology, I think, might save us, might save the richest part of the population. But if we only do technology and we forget about our lifestyles, I think we will end up living in cities, and I don't want that. I want living in contact with nature and with technology all at the same time. So I think it's fine, but I think it also lacks one part, that is changing our consumption levels, our way of thinking cities, of or the ways that we work. I think it's fine, but I think it lacks one part of the equation.
Thank you. There's one last question we can take here from Anna Ü. How important do you think are figures or animations of scientific data for communication, as it might be easier to use, for example, in social media to get attention? So what's your thought on that, figures and animations of scientific data?
Yes, I think they are key to do science communication. In fact, not only drawings or things that are animated, but also photographs. I'm a huge fan of I don't know the word in English, but it's fotoreportajes, you know, telling a story, doing a story with pictures. And if we can combine these images, the real images, either photographs or real photograph with, or drawings with letters, all of that combined, it's boom. And if we take advantage also of the technology, we have written ways of doing things. We have all interactive. We can be interactive. We can do videos with interactions. We can use one thing. What we are doing is using Instagram, for instance, to do questions and to receive the responses from our users. And we have to take advantage of all what technology gives us for the good part. And of course, images are essential. Pictures, videos. People is really curious, and so if you take something that happened to you, that's also useful. But yes, pictures are essential.
Okay, Tamara, thank you so much once again. Also, by the way, nice place where you're in. Really cozy wooden place. It looks as if, at least from here. All the best for you for your task that you have at hand there with the.
I feel like Björn just froze a bit, but anyway, I think he wanted just to say goodbye, and thank you very much for joining this episode again, everybody out there, and see you next week then. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.